So this homily this morning will be a little bit more children-oriented. However, I do have a second version of a homily that's a little bit more adult-oriented, all referring to communion, and particularly what we as Catholics believe about Jesus in Holy Communion. And some of our practices that we as Catholics hold dear about our belief in Jesus in Holy Communion, and perhaps some of the differences between us and other Christian denominations. So if you're interested in that a little bit more communion, adult-oriented homily, that will be posted on our Facebook page. You can go there for your own enjoyment. But this morning, I would like to get a little help from some of our children who are receiving First Communion, so I need 8 brave volunteers who want to come up here and act out the gospel with me. So 8 children who are willing to come up and act out the gospel. We'll take 1 there, 2, okay, 3, let's see, 4, 5, you got to behave, 6, 7, 8, sure. Okay, so I'm going to have you go over and stand by that pillar over there. Very good. Okay, so that's good. All right. So you 3 kind of stand down over here. Okay, so we have Jesus. And Jesus, he tells a little bit of a mini parable today. He tells us sort of a compare and contrast. In the first situation, he says there's this guy who owns a whole bunch of sheep. You see the sheep over there? Those are his sheep, and they make sheep noises, right, sheep? Sheep noises? Okay, they're making sheep noises, but he owns sheep, and he has this, he comes to this person, and he says, you know what, I've got a bunch of sheep. I will pay you money. I'm going to give you money, and I want you to go take care of my sheep. And she thinks, ooh, money. I'll go take care of those sheep. So she goes over, and she's taking care of the sheep. And the sheep, they're in the pasture, and she is watching over the sheep, and she's taking care of them, and the sheep, they're doing their thing, they're eating. And then one day, suddenly, comes out of nowhere the big, bad wolf. And the big bad wolf, he comes over, and he sees sheep, and you're hungry, aren't you? Yeah, he's hungry. And he goes over and he's ready to get some sheep, and he goes, "Rah!" Big, scary wolf. And the shepherdess, she sees the wolf, and she thinks about the money. And she looks again at the wolf and thinks about the money and says, "I don't care about the money," and she runs away from the big bad wolf. And the wolf goes over and starts chasing the sheep. And he goes over chasing the sheep, and the sheep are all scared. And he suddenly catches a sheep, and he eats it. Eats it, yes. No. I need better actors. He eats the sheep, and then he goes back to his cave. That's the first part of the story. And Jesus says that first hired person, they don't care about the sheep. They're working just for money. They have no personal interest in the sheep. They don't have a personal relationship with the sheep. They're just in it for money. So Jesus gives the second scenario. And he says, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. And he goes among the sheep, and he knows them. And he he knows them by name. He knows what they look like. He knows all their flaws, and he knows which ones are strong, which ones are weak. He knows the sheep, but also the sheep know him. Now, folks, I want to pause there for a second, because here's Jesus who says, my sheep know me. Many of us, we might know about Jesus. Maybe we come to church. Maybe we've heard the stories of Jesus. We know his disciples. We know his mother. We know about Jesus, but maybe we don't know Jesus personally. Maybe we know about him, but to know him like an intimate friend or a spouse, maybe we're not on that level where we know the Good Shepherd. So Jesus says, I am the Good Shepherd, and I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. And he's taking care of the sheep. He's taking care of his sheep, and suddenly, the big bad wolf, he's hungry again, and I need an altar server to kind of fill out the roster. So why don't you come over, altar server? Yeah, just one of you, that's fine. So the altar server's also a sheep, and the big bad wolf, he's hungry again, and he looks over, and he sees a big, juicy sheep. And he's really hungry, and he goes over the big, juicy sheep amongst the sheep, and the wolf comes, and he's ready to eat. But suddenly, Jesus, the Good Shepherd, comes in the way. And this one does not run away from the sheep, because he knows the sheep, and the sheep know him. And he's ready to defend. And so he begins to fight back against the shepherd, or against the wolf. And he's fighting back, and he's fighting back. But suddenly, the Good Shepherd does something strange. Jesus says, I am the Good Shepherd, and I will lay down my life for the sheep. So suddenly the Good Shepherd lays down, and the wolf pounces on him. Pounces, yeah, okay. And kills Jesus. He pounces on him, and when he's biting into him, killing him, he thinks, he doesn't taste very good, does he? No, it doesn't taste good. I want that big, juicy sheep. And suddenly he's going after the rest of the sheep. And the sheep are running away, and they're a little scared of the shepherd, of the wolf. But the wolf's not quite going. Okay. And then Jesus, he has a trick up his sleeve. Because Jesus says, I will lay down my life, but I will take it up again. I have power to lay it down and power to take it up. No one can take it from me. I lay it down of my own, and I take it up of my own. So the Good Shepherd resurrects from the dead. The Good Shepherd comes back alive, and when the wolf has his back trying to go eat the sheep, the back to the Good Shepherd comes and kills and stops the wolf. Jesus is the Good Shepherd who defends his sheep. Folks, we want to be defended by Jesus Christ. We want him in our lives, but we must not only be known by the Good Shepherd, we must know him. Now, what we're celebrating today is First Communion, and we know that First Communion is where Jesus gives us his body and blood. So we know that Jesus first laid down his life for his sheep at the Last Supper. So Jesus, instead of picking his nose, took bread and said, "This is my body." And he took wine and changed it and said, "This is my blood." He laid down his body and blood. And then later on the cross, he fulfilled that by giving his body and his blood. And then in the tomb, he rose from the dead, giving us body and blood alive. In communion, we receive Jesus Christ in his body and in his blood, and he's alive. He wants to know us. Let's give a round of applause for our first communion kids. Thank you, kids. You can go back to your parents. My friends, Jesus Christ is the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd knows his sheep, and the sheep know him. Jesus gave his body and blood to his sheep. There is no better way to know Jesus Christ than to have him right inside of our bodies. His body, his blood inside of us, that intimate communion between one person, the person of Jesus, and another person, us. Jesus is the Good Shepherd. He knows his sheep, but the big question is, will his sheep want to know him?